Hello everybody and welcome to this week's Motor Trade Radio podcast, brought to you in association with eBay Motors Group. It is Saturday the 16th of October and you're joined by myself, Philip Nothard.
And me, Curtis Hutchinson. This is episode 54, season 7 of Motor Trade Radio, bringing you all the chatter that matters. And once again, we've gathered together this week's big car retailing stories across the franchised and independent sectors for you to enjoy all in one place, on demand, on your podcast feed.
Well, this week's a big one.
Well, yeah.
So we will pre-warn everybody now that this is a big podcast this week.
It's a bit of an epic this week because we've actually got the biggest acquisition, not just of the year, but since 2016.
Yeah, so we will urge you to hold on. We have got a couple of headlines before it, just to cover off some of the big news that's been happening across the sector this week as well. But we have managed to grab some time with Daksh Gupta, who is a very good friend of the podcast amongst many others. But he's going to be talking us through the biggest acquisition, as Curtis has said there, of Marshalls, who've bought the business Motorline for a $64.5 million deal, and significant moves and grows their footprint in that geographical spread and brand representation for Marshalls. But we won't say too much about that for now because everything is in the interview there, and Dash was certainly on good form, and we didn't expect it really because I know it's been a long time for him. He's had his birthday, COVID, and obviously the acquisition, but he weren't slowing down on what he had to say.
Yeah, it's probably worth adding that for the last week, he's been holed up at home because he's had COVID, so he's been recovering from COVID, whilst they've been signing off, closing and completing the acquisition. And I did notice in the press, I think his chairman described him as being like a caged tiger, which you can imagine Dash just wanting to be out there, out and about, meeting the new expanded team from Motorline. But Of course he couldn't. But he is better now. That's the main thing.
He is. But yeah, it's we have got a few other headlines this week, and then it's just hang on till the end there for the interview with Dash.
Yeah, so headlines this week are from AM, Motor Trader, Car Dealer and Automotive News Europe. And the headlines are, new car shortage might be good for dealers, says Kia's UK boss. Auction houses expect used values to continue rising. Most buyers still want the dealership experience, although online elements are welcome. And second-hand car price boom in UK amid microchip squeeze.
So yeah, we're heading off to Car Dealer at first, and this is an interview that they had with CEO of Kia Motors UK, or CEO and President Paul Philpott there, and I think it was part of them winning the Car Dealer award for manufacturer of the year. But he did share a light on terms of what his view is around the new vehicle shortage and why it should be good for dealers in terms of that profitability opportunity for the network. But it did raise another question in the report, didn't it, Curtis, about these long lead times and what that means for salespeople that are waiting for these new cars to be delivered.
Yeah, so Paul Philpott does actually raise the question of how do you go about remunerating sales staff who are no longer on a sort of 2-week or monthly cycle. So they sell the car, the customer picks up the car, they get their commission. That's now happening over a period of several months, if not longer, in the new car market. So Paul Philpott is raising that as an issue. And within this piece, he is talking about, yes, it's potentially, it's welcome news at the moment in terms of better margins, retained prices for both dealers and OEMs. But the problem is, what do the sales? How do you remunerate and keep salespeople, remunerated as part of that process.
And we, I mean, this is kind of an area we've touched on several times over the years on the podcast, around the basic salaries and the remuneration of salespeople in today's world. And I think there's many commentators from many of the AM100 dealers of how they have changed remuneration packages, how they've changed the role of that salesperson within their showroom, where they're trying to, where the sales specialists or front end greeters and things like this, and where they've tried to sort of increase basic salaries and take focus away from that reward target objectives that were always the key driver in car sales. And maybe that's where now that new process and remuneration plan does pay off in many ways for those dealers, that those salespeople, they're not too heavily focused on having to wait for that car in front, that may have a 6-12 month or longer lead time before it turns into an actual deal that they'll earn commission on. But there's still a profit element of this, isn't there, Curtis?
Yeah, there is. And Paul Philpott does shed some light on the current new car supply situation. I mean, he says it's certainly here for the medium term, if not the long term, with below optimum stocking levels at least through to the first half of next year, which is actually something that Daksh touches on during his interview as well. So, yeah, we are in it for a long time and well into next year. So what Paul Philpott is challenging is the way that processes are currently in place probably need to be addressed, need to be changed.
Yeah, and I think in meetings I've been at this week and conversations across the dealer network, that order takes are positive. The order bank is building for the future. Those orders are profitable as well, because there's not, because of that shortage of supply. Then the retailers and dealers can hold on to the margin more and better, as we've been reporting recently in some of the financial outputs. The question will be is when it actually turns into actual profit, because they are at this point orders for the future. Yeah. So I think the positive news is that when those do turn into orders, when the manufacturers actually start to supply those vehicles to those orders and match them, then we could see a very profitable network again when they turn into fruition in the future. But we'll keep an eye on that one.
Yeah. Meanwhile, everyone's trying to get hold of used cars, which brings us on to the next story from Motor Trader. The headline is the majority of auction houses expect used values to continue rising. So this is based on research carried out by the National Association of Motor Auctions, who found that 70% of auction houses are expecting to see an increase in values over the next month. And this really feeds into our monthly conversations with Darren Martin from CAP HBI, who's been tracking that rise since March, April time in the wholesale sectors. So yes, auction houses expect that trend to continue, which I guess is something you must be seeing, Phil.
Yeah, first-time conversions at the minute are over 90%. Average of cap clean through the data I'm seeing is again above 100% on all age and mileage points. So that's a significant performance, and there's no sign. I know that in the report there they talk about 50% of the respondents see volumes remaining the same, and I think that's about right. I think there's no sign of an influx of product now in the fourth quarter. I think Darren does touch on the point that they're expecting, albeit the rise is not to be the levels that we may have seen in the recent months, but we do expect rises to continue throughout October, November and December. Many as retailers look to, fulfill stock availability on their forecourts. And don't forget, we're building towards that January sale that there's normally a very profitable time for retailers in the used car marketplace.
Yeah, and interestingly, just over a third predict volumes will increase. So it'll be interesting to see where those volumes are coming from, because everyone wants to see those vehicles.
Yes, yeah. So I think it's going to be an interesting fourth quarter, but I think a lot of focus now is what will that mean now heading into 2022 and that first quarter of the year, because as I say, we've seen significant volume increases in January as a lot of the bigger groups see these January sales, put a lot of focus and emphasis on January sales, and that a lot of them will be desperately trying to find product for that now. So it's going to be an interesting time.
And staying with Motor Trader, the next headline is buyers still want the dealership experience, although online element welcomes. So this is some research carried out by our sponsor, eBay Motors Group, for their digital touchpoint survey, which found that 34% of buyers feel very comfortable test driving a car at a dealership before actually completing the purchase online, with 21% saying it would actually be their preference. But the overwhelming majority, so that's 70%, want to visit the dealership to view, test drive, and buy their next used car in person. So it's quite an interesting insight here, because